Dwarves, and the War of the Three Hammers. Everyone has at least one fantasy race they prefer from whatever media they know it from. Elves with their connection to nature and dexterous usage of ranged weaponry, long pristine hair and otherworldly presence. Orcs with their savage but ancestral ways, opting to brute strength and shamanistic magic. Or maybe our own selves, humans with their adaptable nature, fitting into any place and garnering a reputation of fast growth. These are all different races across Azeroth that people can find a common trait of themselves in, but there is another that a lot of people's interest lies in. Long have people been a fan of the Dwarves, hard-hitting, gold-digging, beer-drinking folks who, mostly, live in their mighty stone halls and tight-knitted communities, never shying away from speaking their minds and quick to make allies. These characteristic traits are of course changing for whatever source they're from time to time, but the Dwarves have always taken a spot in some players' hearts for being the ones that feels closest to them. And now we get to talk about them. After their departure from Northrend and the curse of flesh ripping them from their earthen origins, the Dwarves, now wandering through the eastern kingdoms, happened upon the lands right under Lord Eren and claimed the place as Cos Moden. They built many homes inside the mountains, but most fell to the Orc invasion in the Second War, except for the city of Ironforge. Inside there were many Dwarven clans with their own way of traditions and sub-clans. But the ones that were the most seen and under the spotlight were three of them: Ironforge Dwarves, also known as the Bronzebeard clan, Wildhammer Dwarves, and the Dark Iron clan. These three clans were the most dominant in the Dwarven kingdom and would play big parts in the War of the Three Hammers. Like all dwarves, these three share the same origin coming from the Earthen, but their paths diverge with the death of High King Modimus and Vilmar, and with the seat now empty, the three have found themselves part of a civil war for control of Ironforge. Being the original defenders of the city and showing themselves the more powerful out of them all with the bigger army, Bronzebeards took control of the city and banished both the Wildhammers and the Dark Irons out. With this humiliation, while the Wildhammers were residing in the base of the mountains of Ironforge prior to the war, they had to abandon their home and traveled north all the way to the east of wetlands and created their own kingdom within the city Grimbat Ol. Meanwhile, the Dark Irons, suffering a worse shame found in their defeat, forcefully left behind the deepest parts of Ironforge and traveled south, away from the other clans, and founded a city named after their sorcerer Thane Thurissen in the mountains of Red Ridge. They however fed the shame they took inside themselves, and with the help of his wife Modgood, Thane Thurissen launched an attack on both the Bronzebeards of Ironforge and the Wildhammers of Grimbat Ol. The attack was almost nearly a success, but they were thwarted at the end, as while Thurissen suffered defeat with his attack on Ironforge and fled back to Red Ridge Mountains, Modgood was maybe slightly more successful than him, but met her death at the hands of Wildhammer's Thane Cardro's Wildhammer. However much this attack failed to meet up to expectations, both the Bronzebeards and Wildhammers decided to set aside their grudge and united against the Dark Irons, marching towards the city of Thurissen as allies. The event they didn't account for, however, was that Thane Thurissen had summoned the ancient power that was once banished underneath the Red Ridge Mountains, and Ragnaros the Fire Lord was unleashed upon the lands. Ragnaros coming destroyed part of the Red Ridge Mountains and erupted a volcano in the middle of it all, later to be called Blackrock Mountain. This action, however, has also claimed the life of Thane Thurissen, and the surviving Dark Iron Dwarves were enslaved by the Fire Lord himself. Admittedly scared of the coming of Ragnaros, Bronzebeards and Wildhammer returned back, leaving the area to the newly emerged threat. After the chaos of this whole event and the grudge between the two gone, the Wildhammer clan were invited back to Ironforge by the Bronzebeards, but they turned down this request out of pride. Instead, they returned to Grimbat Ol, but found their city uninhabitable by the previous attack from Modgood and her dark sorcery, and had to leave it behind to its corruption. Thane Cardros, finding not much else to do, took his people more towards the north, into the lands of Lordaeron, and settled into the lush green lands of the hinterlands. This has also made the Wildhammer Dwarves grow a closer bond towards nature, and given them the chance to tame the griffins of this land. Each clan left the others to themselves for a while, but fate would bring their stories back together. The Bronzebeard clan continued to control Ironforge, and were the first ones to be noticed by the human kingdoms before the First War, by the armies of Gilneas and Alterac exploring through the lands of Kars Moden. Inviting the humans inside Ironforge, they quickly forged a bond with each other, humans hearing details on metallurgy and engineering, and dwarves learning about the light. They also acquired new allies in the form of gnomes, with their interest in metalworking and engineering on par. The Wildhammers, learning to ride the mighty griffins of their newfound home, quickly became a force to be reckoned with, and even helped both the Bronzebeards of Ironforge and the now established alliance against the invasion of orcs, after the alliance came to their aid defending the airy peaks of the hinterlands in the Second War. They would soon also join the alliance by this move from humans. The Dark Iron Dwarves, however, would continue to serve Ragnaros, and even struck deals with the Blackrock clan orcs, but this also wouldn't last long and would become a fight amongst the two. After some time, descendant of the Thane Tharissen, Emperor Dagran Tharissen, swimming in the power granted by the Fire Lord, was killed by the forces sent by King Magni Bronzebeard of Ironforge. His death, however, would fill the heart of his wife Moira Bronzebeard Thracian with rage. Originally, the intention was to take Moira back to Ironforge, but she refused this after the death of his husband, announced her pregnancy, and took over the leadership of the Dark Iron clan as its queen regent. Even though they were of the same origin, we can see that even before the death of High King Modimus and Vilmar, tensions between clans were a thing that every member knew in their hearts. The death of their king, creating a power vacuum, finally broke that thin bond apart, and all three predominant clans fell into a civil war that would not only hurt each other, but also the lands and many other denizens living there. We can always see these effects around their respective maps and quests too, how the people feel towards these events and what they think of each other. This particular aspect is why many players love dwarves in World of Warcraft. Other races also have plenty of stories for themselves, and even some that are more interesting and eventful than the ones mentioned here. But the dwarves have within their history all sorts of themes, and that's what makes their story worthwhile to dive into.